Hi, welcome to Keep On Pushing TV. I am your host, Devon Harris. And yeah, man, you know what we do. We share ideas and insights that are going to challenge you and inspire you to keep on pushing and live your absolute best life. So the question is that something you're interested in? Do you want to live your best life? Well, if so, you're in the right place, and we have an amazing guest to show you, teach you, share some ideas with you as to how you can do that. So again, welcome to Keep On Pushing TV. In 1985, our guest today became the first British javelin thrower to break 90 meters, the 90-meter barrier with the old rule javelin. And with that throw, he set a Commonwealth record. In 1986, he became the first man in the world to surpass the 80-meter barrier with the new rule javelin. He threw a world record 81.7 meters, and the following year, 1987, he even improved on that record. He has represented Great Britain in 2 Olympic Games, the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics, and as well as the 1988 Olympics in Seoul, Korea. And in 1992, he was named as an alternate to the British Olympic team. Interestingly enough, in 1996, he was named as an alternate to the US Olympic team. In fact, he has competed in the 2000, 2004, and 2008 US Olympic trials. And then for his 8th Olympic trials, he competed in 2012 in the UK Olympic trials as well, where he finished 2nd. In addition to his well-documented and simply tremendous athletic talent, our guest is also an artist. In fact, he is known as the Olympic Picasso. In 2000, he competed in the US Olympic Committee sports art competition in the painting division and won a gold medal for his work entitled Struggle for Perfection. That piece went on as part of an international exhibition at the International Olympic Committee Museum in Lausanne, Switzerland, as part of the 2000 Sydney Olympic cultural events. In early 2000, our guest became a founding member of an Olympic revival movement known as Art of the Olympians. In 2010, he was appointed Legacy Ambassador in the UK for the Youth Sports Trust 2012 Sports College Legacy Program. And in 2017, he was appointed to the Olympic Culture and Heritage Commission. He has such a long list of accomplishments and accolades. It will take us the entire time to list all of them. So, I'll just break here and just, eagerly welcome our guest, Roald Bradstock, to Keep On Pushing. Roald, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Devon. Thanks very much.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Thanks for taking the time to come out. When we think of an Olympian, Roald, we think of someone who has developed a passion for sports in general, and for particular discipline, and then they kind of pour their life, all their energies into becoming the best they can be at that discipline. I assume it's the same as for an artist as well. And you have developed a passion for both sports and art from a very early age. How did that come about for you?
Well, to me, it was simultaneous, where I was just always very interested in the arts and visual images and paintings and photographs. And when I was 4, 5, 6 years old, I started making little plasticine soldiers, plasticine men about 4 or 5 centimeters high. Made thousands and thousands of them, and had these kind of wars, these battles in my bedroom. Took photographs, and I wanted to be an artist. But it was at the same time where, again, this was 68 to be Mexico Olympics, when I was watching the BBC and watching the Olympics, and I remember seeing a little black and white TV screen in my parents' kitchen, the Olympics, and seeing a javelin thrower and hearing the crowd roar, and I said, that's what I want to be. That's what I want to be, a javelin thrower. Because I already knew at that time that I love throwing things. Throwing snowballs, throwing sticks and stones, breaking windows. But it's also at the same time where I was diagnosed with spina bifida and told that I shouldn't, not only will I never go to the Olympics, but I should avoid sport at all costs. And anyone that knows me, knows that when people tell me that I can't do something, it's more motivation for me to do it. And you being a fellow Olympian, that kind of one thing I know about. I've never met an Olympian that doesn't have the same trait where we're fighters and we push, and whether it's from within or from outside, helping us. What motivates us is we push as athletes, but then we also do that in other parts of our lives too.
Interesting. We're, as athletes, as Olympians, we push, and I agree with you. Where do you think that trait comes from, Roald, for us to want to naturally push? Someone tells us we can't do something, and it's almost a license, a green light to say, hey, go do it.
Good question. I don't know, but I know it's definitely a character trait. Maybe it's in our DNA. I think it's something that you can learn to some extent, but I think a lot of people that I've met, especially Olympians, have it. They have it. It's just an ability they have. Now they nurture it, and it's they can really tune in. But I think it is something that other people can learn, and kind of how to. What inspires you, what are you passionate about? And when I've gone over the years doing various workshops or coaching seminars or whatever, I always try and expand it beyond whether it's art or the sport, and just talk about questioning things and looking at your environment, and what excites you, what makes you want to get up in the morning, whether it's art or sport or accounting, or just to find those things in your life that you want to really pursue. And then but the key thing is then to take the steps to pursue it. Whether you're going to be an athlete, I think the biggest thing I've seen over the years is people say, well, I want to be an Olympian or I want to do this, but then they don't take the steps to do it. Yeah. And you have to take the steps to get there. Set the short and long-term goals. Do the work and push forward. And to me, but you also have to embrace the fact that there are going to be failures, and that's just part of the process to succeed. And I think that's one thing that, again, a parent, I've got children of my own. Is that I think we're doing them a disservice in a lot of the culture, I think worldwide, where we're trying to protect the children so much, from failing.
Yeah.
And I think that's a mistake. And I think that's one thing that sport teaches you, is that, no, I don't care. There's no one out there that's with a broken world record or won a gold medal that hasn't failed at some point. It's just, you have to get there.
So you touch on some really good points here. Passion, finding that thing that is going to wake you up or have you wake up in the morning that you can pursue, and then making sure that you're taking the steps, going through the process to get there. Because a lot of people, or too many people, I think, wake up not having a passion, and so therefore have difficulty in finding a way to push past difficulties that life inevitably is going to throw at us. But also this whole idea of failure, Raul, you brought that up, and I think it's important. And maybe there's no better place to learn about failure, certainly in our early lives, than in sports, and through sports. And I fear sometimes, and I have young kids who are playing sports now, and I understand the culture around the world now is that you participate and everybody gets a medal, everybody gets a participatory trophy, and everybody is told that they did a great job. And I think the trick is to find a balance between not destroying self-esteem and building emotional resilience, don't you think?
Absolutely, totally agree.
Because what you find is that, sooner or later they're out of the house, they're in the job world, and you're working in a company or you're trying to run your own business. And if you weren't trained and if you hadn't developed that emotional resilience and that ability to push, as you so rightly said, that you mentioned in your workshops, you try to teach people about the need to push in other areas of life as well. So if they're not learning that, then they're going to have a hard time pushing forward in their businesses and in their careers. So you demonstrated that really early. As I mentioned, you were diagnosed with spina bifida. You also were diagnosed with hydrocephalus. Before we touch on how that impacted, I guess, a decision in terms of the sports that you pursued, how did that impact you emotionally? Were you teased? I'm assuming you looked a little differently when you were compared to the other kids when you were younger. Were you teased? What did all of that play out?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting because, here I am now, I'm 57, closing in on my 58th birthday. And what am I doing? And, 50 years on, I'm doing artwork. I'm still throwing things, not just javelins, but other objects. And and kind of looking back now is, I kind of look at that, again, being an artist, I'd be very critical about when I'm doing a painting, or I've got to, I'm my own worst critic because I have to be. So I kind of look back at, my life and what motivated, why am I still throwing? There's no money involved. I mean, there's a lot of time, a lot of effort. I mean, it's painful. It's, so I looked at that, and really it goes back to, again, when I'm 5-6 years old, being diagnosed, and I can remember very clearly being in hospital and the doctors looking at an X-ray, and then looking over at me and asking me to walk across the room, and then walk back to my chair, sit down. Then they look back at the X-ray, and then look to my parents. And again, I'm 6 years old. I can understand what they're saying, and they're saying, well, looking at this, we don't know why you can walk. You shouldn't be able to even, they're looking at X-ray of my spine. And so for much of my early childhood, I was going to hospital and getting regular X-rays and a brain scan a couple of times, and every 3-6 months. So it was a major part of my life. My father was also much older than my mother, and he retired, and he's always kind of talking about death, and just so I was very aware about time and about, I guess, health. And to me, is then being told to avoid sports, and I knew what I liked doing, and it was really when I saw when I was watching the Mexico Olympics, it was I wanted to be an Olympian, and I wanted to be a javelin thrower. And yes, I mean, I was teased. My head was almost, basically fully grown. When I was first diagnosed, the reason why my mother took me in, who was a nurse, is my head was growing 1 inch a week in circumference for 6 weeks over the summer. And she noticed my head was kind of slumping forward. I'm trying to alleviate the pressure on my neck. And so So I looked a little bit different. I looked like kind of, Charlie Brown, and I was called Charlie Brown. And I was called, TV hair. I mean, you name it. It's just, and it just, I won't say emotionally scarred me, but again, it's one of those things I went through, and I know other people, children go through. But I look at it as, again, so how do I learn that at a young age to, turn something negative into a positive and to fuel me?
Mm-hmm.
And again, so as I went on to become a teenager, and one thing I could do, I could outthrow anyone and everyone. And then but I knew I had to be very creative because of my spine had limitations. I knew I was going to be that tall just because of, look at my family, no one was very tall. So I knew I was going to have to be very smart and think about, technique and training. So I developed a technique that was very unusual, and people laughed at it, and yet I went from 25 meters to 30 to 40 to 50. I kept improving, and everyone kept telling me, well, you won't throw any further than that. You won't throw any further than that. I got my first international in 1979, and at my very first international in England, competing for Great Britain, they stopped the meet, and everyone watched me throw, and they had to make a decision whether what I was doing was legal, because they'd never seen anyone.
Because of the technique you were using?
Yes, and the technique I developed was what I call a wrap. It's like very rotational, and basically the whole concept was, because of my weak back, I had to basically lengthen the pull as long as possible to alleviate the stress on my body over a longer period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So on the one hand, it allowed me to have a really long pull to really maximize my distance, my potential. Because at the same another time, the other benefit was it would reduce the strain on my back. Mm-hmm. The flip side of that is 40 years on, I've never had an elbow or shoulder problems. I tore my meniscus a few years ago when I slipped getting out of a car, but I've never had any major injury, and I'm still competing, and I'm still, and everyone's scratching their heads now because they don't understand, but I'm still regarded as, the nicest term is as an outlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But other people just call me a freak of nature, the kind of, I throw golf balls when I do my training and other stuff people don't agree with, and yet here I am.
Yeah,
and
but yeah. So I thought about this. I wondered about it as I was reading up and researching you. Spina Bifida, and yet you are a javelin thrower. How that would impact your back? So two things there is, one, this diagnosis should have completely derailed any chances of you going to the Olympics, especially in a throwing event. And I know when you were younger, you also did weightlifting and powerlifting, which would also suggest, adverse effects for your back. But you were able to somehow come up with techniques that would allow you not just to do your events, but have longevity. What advice do you have for us mere mortals, Roald, who face situations like that? How do we get past those challenges?
Well, I think it's, you've got to be critical of yourself and be realistic. I think the first thing, again, as an artist, and you're trained as an artist, the thing you learn and you're taught is basically to question, to look at things, and it sounds very simple, but it is so hard to do, because we have so many, we see things a certain way because of our, how we grew up, who we're surrounded with, what people say. It's like, we have all these influences that, affect us in our judgment. So to answer your question, as far as, you have a challenge, whatever, to me, it would be, first of all, you have to be, identify what the challenge or issue is. Is it something that you believe, or something, people keep telling you, kind of, and be honest with yourself. Because if you can do that, if you can identify it, then you can address it, and you can, take steps to, work with it, work around it.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to know and have to be realistic to, and if you don't take that first step, then everything else is kind of moot. I mean, you're kind of almost wasting your time.
Yeah, yeah.
So again, to me, it's about I want to be efficient with my time. And when I do things, I hate doing things that dead end. I always want to do something that's ongoing. So it's not I never go into a wall directly. I may go into a hurdle or some kind of barrier, but I can find a way to then go under it, over it, around it, or through it.
Sounds like keep on pushing to me. That's exactly what I speak about, finding a way to get over, under, or around the obstacles that's standing in our way. Bob Marley sings about the fact that when one door is closed, another is open. And again, I think that is so in sync with the keep on pushing message, and in terms of what you have done, because it appeared as if the doctors had closed a door for you, but what you're saying to us is, hey, be honest, evaluate your situation. The door is closed, but there must be another one open. So rather than settle for and bemoan your misfortune, figure out how you can shift your thinking and hence your approach to get to where you want to go, right?
And that's absolutely key is, how you think and how you approach something, because again, it's, you've got to constantly have a voice in our head. It's about, what that voice says and how you respond to it. And it's just, and to me, to me, things are just so I won't say straightforward, but so on the surface, obvious, but yet so many people don't do it. And it's just the kind of, and I'm kind of stunned over the years when, I say certain things I think it's so obvious to everyone, and people are like, oh, I never thought of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And again, it's that, we all have a certain point of view. We have a certain life experience. And that's where, again, it's, how we view the world, and kind of, we're part of, we're not here in isolation. And all these things, everything's constantly moving around us, and our bodies are constantly changing, whether we're, from babies growing up, to being adults, to, the aging process. And to me, it goes, now again, what I learned as, from a young child to an adult, I'm now kind of embracing on the flip side, where I'm now losing, what I kind of built up, and, doing masters.
And when you say built up, you mean built up physically? Yeah.
I mean, all the kind of, putting money into the bank where it's, you can kind of, withdraw on it, and all of a sudden now I'm on the flip side where, the money I've had stored up, all that work I put into my body and stuff, it's now age is robbing me of that. It's like, and to me, it's the mindset is within masters is about embracing, being alive and being healthy. And it's a very different, it's a whole thing about, not only thinking, but about attitude, and about kind of embracing life, that, we're all going to die. Mm-hmm. And it's just, and it's not being morbid or kind of negative. People told me that, and just, it's a fact. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
And, and what I'm doing now as an athlete is really embracing that. And, every time I go out to throw or work out, it's another day that I was able to do that. And I look back at so many people that I know now that, that are retiring, or they've retired decades ago as an athlete, but now retiring from work, or people I know that, the same age as me or younger, that have died. And to me, it's just, it can be really depressing. And to me, it's kind of motivating and inspiring. It's like, this is life. This is why, life is valuable, and really embracing, what we have, and don't, squander it, and just, you don't know how long we're going to be here.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that people who are, going through the their quote unquote midlife crisis are kind of looking at all the things that they have lost. They used to be 18 to 21 and young and sprightly and be able to jump tall buildings in a single bound, and now they can barely crawl out of bed because father time is taking its toll. And what they're worried about is all the things they can't do now, as opposed to embracing all the things they can do and enjoying every day that they have, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you're 4 years old and you're watching this guy throw a javelin on a grainy black and white TV in the Mexico Olympic Games, and you fell in love with javelin and throwing things. Seemed like you got in trouble a little bit because you broke a couple of windows, you mentioned.
Yeah.
And even those, I'm guessing, whippings did not deter you from throwing. But you really excelled at javelin, ended up on a scholarship across the pond to the US. When and where did that happen?
That was back in '81, so that was when I was 19. Initially, the university contacted me in 1980. I was just out of high school, and I'd thrown just over 72 meters. And they contacted me, they recruited me, and then in about March of the following year, they took back the offer, and I opened up the season with 73, and pretty much every week, every meet, I improved and up to going to 83 meters. This was as a junior, as a 19-year-old.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, they came back to me and offered me the scholarship again, and I always wanted to, again, one of those things where it's kind of visualization and the power of the mind, but taking those steps. I always wanted to, saw myself being in the US, and I just, I guess it's from the movies and from American TV. I got the, I could get the feeling of the culture about, pushing and, trying new things wasn't frowned upon in the US. There was something embraced.
Right.
And failing wasn't something, to be kind of laughed at, and it was part of the process. And and again, I don't know, it wasn't any one program. I just picked that up. So to me, I wanted to be in the US, and I just figured that's going to be, where I could really excel. And I came over in '81, and again, that's 3 years before. Cause my goal was obviously to make it to the Olympics. So by the '84 Olympics, I've been there for, in the US for 3 years, and I knew all the athletes, I knew the coaches, and I was very comfortable in America, and it just seemed a very natural flow.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned a really important word just now, visualization. Roald, talk to us a little bit, just for a minute or so, about visualization and the power it has to help us achieve our goals.
Well, I believe that, I know for a fact from my experience that there isn't a single time when I've thrown well that I didn't see it beforehand. And it's I kind of describe it as watching TV, but it's not. It's like being in a TV, and you basically, it's like four-dimensional, where you're in the surroundings, but it's also happening to you, and you can sense, what's going to happen, and it's already happened, and you're basically looking at it and you're reliving it. This is before I've done it, and you're kind of reliving what you just did and that excitement and stuff. Before we did it. I did that when I threw 70, and I threw 80, and I threw 90. When I threw my last couple of world records, I knew it beforehand, and I even said it on my videos I posted on YouTube. Okay, world record next throw, and then ran down and threw it, because it's just it came in. It's like it came in crystal clear, and it was just there wasn't a shred of doubt. It wasn't like 80, 90%. So if it came in 100%. And that's when, when competing and stuff, you can make it, you're in that zone. And then in between, when I sleep and other stuff, I get in these moments where you just constantly think about things and what you want to do, and it's just, you just keep thinking about it, and then, well, how am I going to do that? And you just get to the point where it's already happened.
Yeah,
it's already happened in your mind, and there's no, it's not foreign to you. It's something that is just you feel like you've already accomplished, and then all you do is you go out and you take it.
So, and that's a really important, because I think we spend so much time thinking about visualizing all the things that we don't want. And whether we are visualizing and thinking about the things we don't want or the things we do want, it does become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yep.
And so we have a choice, right, to just flip the switch then and think about and picture ourselves being, doing, having the things that we want, and eventually having them come true.
Yep, absolutely.
So one of the things I've noticed with many people, Roald, across many fields is that they're one-hit wonders. And by that I mean, they get to the very top of their field, they really excel, and then they kind of disappear. You, my friend, you've been at the top or near the top of your field for many decades. We spoke about your accomplishments back in the 80s, 85, 86, 87, leading into, as a junior, leading into you being here in the US. Back in 2010, you broke 26 UK national age and age group records. I set 3 world records. As I mentioned earlier, you finished second at the UK trials at age 50, won a silver medal. In fact, you're the oldest medalist in any event for, since 1936. You just set another age at age 57 earlier this year in May, another record in Florida. So you have demonstrated longevity. What is the secret, and how do you advise the salesperson, the accountant, the nurse, the doctor? What advice would you give them to help them to stay at the top of their game as well for such long periods?
Well, again, it's about what you're doing is about being passionate, and so that whatever you're doing, it isn't work. It isn't something you have to think about or kind of try and motivate yourself to do, or just, it's something that you want to do. You can't wait to do it. Mm-hmm. And it's just something that is so much part of you that is just, there's no separation between you and whatever it is you're doing, whether you're an accountant or sales, or it is who you are. And it's just, and to me is, and again, I can explain that where, like with throwing, that people always think about the throw as, well, from the moment it lets you let go of your hand to when it lands. I'm like, no, it starts when you're at the end of the runway. So what I'm trying to explain to them is, the throw starts when you're at the beginning of the runway with the javelin in your hand, and it begins when that javelin starts moving. And to me, it goes all the way through to when you let go of it until. So to me, look at it as, the throw being, the actual, job you're doing, whatever, but it's all the work that goes into launching that javelin, into launching your career. That takes work. And a lot of times people don't see that. They don't see what it takes. And, we've all seen great athletes. I mean, people automatically think, Olympians are elite athletes. Okay, I want to disagree with that, but within that, when you see, the Michael Phelps or the Michael Jordan, the Usain Bolts, those superhuman, athletes where, why is it, when they're doing something, it looks so easy? Because, they put the work in, and it's something where it looks effortless. And again, like with great art, where it's just, it becomes so skilled, you've done something so many times, you've visualized it, and you've taken those things where it just becomes second nature. Yeah. And to me, that's where, but again, it goes back to, we talked about before about being honest with who you are and about what excites you. And what are you passionate about and what you want to do, and then then taking the steps to be successful at that. And I won't say convincing, because that means it kind of implies that you have to kind of talk, kind of try and motivate yourself, but put your mindset, create a mindset that you are successful and you're taking the steps to be successful, and the result will be you'll be successful.
Yeah, indeed. So you just mentioned art. We know your athletic career has been well documented. So let's talk a little bit about your other passion, art. What inspires your art, first of all?
Well, to me, the challenge I always had up until about 15, 20 years ago was, I looked at the two parts of my life, sport and art, as two separate entities. And it was really when I got involved, with the Olympic art competition back in 2000, and I found out a little bit of Olympic history about Pierre de Coubertin, the founder of the modern Olympics, was actually an athlete and an artist. And did a little bit more research and found out, about these Olympic competitions, art competitions, and that his original vision was about promoting, the two universal languages, sport and art. And for various reasons, the art got dropped, mainly because at that time they had competitions through 1912 to 1948. But at that time, it was all about amateurism, and they didn't want professionals. And they looked at artists as basically being professionals. So that was basically one of the reasons why they dropped it. Mm-hmm. But what I found is, and again, it's like kind of resetting the way I saw things, was that, the struggle I had was that I'm very passionate about art, very passionate about sport, my javelin throwing, my throwing. And when I did a reset, and I basically realized that the problem I was that it wasn't that the fact that sport and art are different, is that they're the same. And when I had that epiphany, it's like everything clicked. And all of a sudden, I was avoiding doing anything to do with sports as far as with my artwork, because.
Yeah. So how do you find, in what ways do you find them to be the same?
Well, think about it again. Let's go back to visualization. Mm-hmm. And again, I look at it as athletes are performers. They're creative. I mean, look what I did as an athlete. I had to be creative in, developing and modifying, especially now, exercises to get around my limitations, my age. The techniques I've used, and to me, it goes. I'm always looking for another way. Why not? I don't accept anything at face value, because I'm not going to have other people telling me what my limitations are. Mm-hmm. And I look at it as artists, where there's a kind of term or kind of a philosophy in the art world about artists are usually, well, the art world is like 100 years of everyone else. So if you go back, with that in mind, let's go back 100 years, and at that time there was abstraction and distortion, the Picasso and all this stuff going on, and it was, everyone was actually shocked. And we look at it now is, what are we dealing with is about, fake news and about distortion of facts and reality, and, there's information, and just, to me, they're right. If you look at that, where it's the problem we're having now in society is there's so much going on, and we're so overstimulated, and there's all this stuff going on. But again, look at it as everyone agrees that sport is a universal language, right? Mm-hmm. People also agree that art is a universal language, but no one has really put the two together. I mean, Pierre de Coubertin tried to do that. And I think now that's basically what I'm also really excited about, being part of the IOC and the WA, and basically kind of bringing back this old concept, but repackaged, and now with social media and with the internet, and there's always ways that we can communicate and express ourselves, and look at it as, artists, I'm talking about, painters and sculptors, but also, singers and dancers and actors. I mean, what's the difference between that and, Usain Bolt, who runs down whatever and he goes into his pose, right? And he goes in and he's, and it's emotional, and it's something we look at it as being actors on the stage, but it's basically, the script isn't written. We don't know what the outcome's going to be. So when we watch sports, whether it's a game or the Olympic Games, we're watching to see, will they break a record? Who's going to win? What's the drama going to be? Or and so to me, it's storytelling. And you look at the Olympics again. I mean, you got the medals. I mean, who designs the medals? You got all the flags.
Mm-hmm.
You got all the flags. It's designed. It's color. You got the opening and closing ceremony. I mean, the biggest sporting event in the world is bookend by 2 theatrical productions: the opening ceremony and the closing ceremony. Mm-hmm. And on that, there's music, there's theater, there's drama, there's fireworks and lights.
So arts and sports together. So talk to us a little bit about that historical event back in Pyeongchang 2018 that you're a part of.
Yeah, so back in 2016, they had the first time they had several artists, non-Olympians, being part of like an Olympic art project. So in 2017 is when I was appointed by Thomas Bach to the Olympic Cultural and Heritage Commission, and started really pushing for having Olympians-led art projects, going forward. And that's what we did in Pyeongchang. And I was fortunate enough to be the lead artist. We had 2 projects. One was done by a filmmaker, and she did it with another actor, these kind of little vignettes around the Olympic Village, and kind of used Olympians on site as kind of part of their kind of filmmaking. And project I led was a large painting with 15 panels, 1 panel for each of the Olympic sports. And when you put them together, they formed the Olympic rings, and kind of a big, large painting. Mm-hmm. And basically the concept, we brought in 2 other painters, Olympian artists. And we got 111 Olympians, including Prince Albert of Monaco, and also President Bach, Olympic champion 1976 in fencing, contributed to the painting. So 111 Olympians from 39 countries, collaborated on a piece of artwork. Yeah. And now the Olympic Museum has that. I'm waiting, hopefully someday sooner or later. It'll be, shown in the Olympic Museum. But now where, the World Olympian Association, the WA, formed a new arts committee last year called Ollie Arts, which I'm now chairing. And we're now going to be part of the process going forward to help review and work on projects, Olympian-led projects at all the future Olympic Games, including Tokyo next year.
Yeah. How do you see your work in the arts, and what you just described with the World Olympian Association? How do you see that trickling down to Olympic hopefuls and growing Olympism, over the world?
Well, I see it as again, going back to, basically being able to reach. The Olympics is, rightly so. It's a sporting event. So you're going to have a lot of people that watch it and follow it because they like watching sports. What I see the potential here is that through the arts and art projects that we could tap into and reach a whole new audience of people that are interested in the arts but not really sports. And on the flip side of that, we can actually offer something to people that are interested in sports that never even thought about the arts. Mm-hmm. So it's benefit both ways. the other part of the question, look at it as, for even current Olympians, former Olympians, but, definitely future Olympians, if we can really, build this up and it's something that people know about, and we become like the flagship, kind of showing that there's another side to Olympians, and obviously the arts is something very visual. And if we're doing things that involve Olympians, past, present, that future Olympians will know about that, so that when part of the mindset and their goals should be, if they have an artistic talents and leanings, that not only do they want to become an Olympian in the future, but also get involved with Olympian art projects that we're going to be doing.
Yeah, awesome. So the struggle for perfection, the title of the piece that won you gold. When I hear that term, it to me it speaks to an athlete's journey and the challenge that he or she may face as they strive to become their best. And I'm assuming that would be the case for an artist as well. What inspired you? What was your thought process when you came up with that title?
Okay, so basically, I'll tell a quick story in this one. When I painted that, again, it's Olympic rings, but I expanded the Olympic rings. And again, the rings are symbolic of the continents, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the colors are a symbol of, the colors and the flags. So what I did basically is to expand that idea to include, dozens and hundreds, even to thousands of other rings, to basically represent organizations, corporations, individuals, coaches, families, and how they all kind of interact with one another. And again, using perspective and kind of basically kind of showing, representing, past and present and future. And that was really the inspiration. But while I was painting that, and I was painting it in 1998, while I was painting that canvas, the entire time I was visualizing that painting hanging in the Olympic Museum in Lausanne. Mm-hmm. I had no idea there's going to be a competition, had no idea I was going to enter it, had no idea, nothing. But when I was painting that, that's what I was thinking. The following year, in 99, I went to my first big arts festival, outdoor arts festival in Atlanta, the Dogwood Festival in Piedmont Park. And I sold that painting. And I sold it to someone. I had no idea who this guy was. And I delivered it the next day. And he lived on top of this building that he happened to own. And he happened to, I looked out the window and he was right across from the Olympic Park. Mm-hmm. And I'm again just like, I start talking about Olympics. He goes, well, because I built that park. And I did exactly that. I just go, well, it turns out this guy's name was Herman Russell. And he built not only Centennial Park, but also, Atlanta Airport. I mean, he was a huge investor, but also a big arts collector. Right. And so I actually hung this painting, the rings, in his bedroom, overlooking the Olympic Park, Centennial Olympic Park. Only then, for a year later, because I entered the competition, the U.S. Olympic Committee, had this art competition the following year, and it was submitted by slides. So I just sent a whole bunch of slides in, and the one slide that they liked and they ended up winning the competition was that painting. So I then had to go through, it was a lot of stuff I had to go through to get that painting back. Right. To get it in that competition, but it was, well worth it. And again, it was, so 2 years after I painted that, Struggle for Perfection, visualizing it hanging in the Olympic Museum, it was hanging in the Olympic Museum. Mm.
So what does the struggle for perfection mean to you?
Well, for me, again, in the painting, it was, I did all of the circles freehand. Mm-hmm. And it was, how do you paint a circle freehand? Mm-hmm. It's basically impossible, right?
Yeah.
So again, it's the, the athletes desire to reach perfection, to reach your ultimate goal. And again, we look at it in gymnastics, you get the perfect 10. I mean, you're scored in it, because in other sports, I mean, whether it's, bobsledding or, it's getting the fastest times, a little bit more fluid. But to me, it's, as an athlete, is struggle for perfection is about all that work you've got to put in, in training, but then also in competition to get that perfect run, jump, throw performance that will get you, to where you want to be, which is on the podium, and hopefully on the top of the podium.
Mm-hmm. So are you saying then that perfection is achievable, or do you see it as as kind of a fluid, as part of the process to being your best?
Yeah, and again, it's a kind of life and death. To me, it's, if you really look at the big picture, you can never get perfection, because if perfection implies it can never be improved on.
Right.
So if you look at it as, it can be perfection temporarily, or perfection for yourself at a moment in time, but again, just like with art, I mean, it's something we're constantly building and improving on it. So, I throw, 90 meters, someone throw 100 meters, someone runs 10 seconds, someone run it's like, so again, it's something that, I don't believe we're anywhere near ever being able to get to perfection.
Right.
And I think it's something that is basically, we're always reaching for, but we'll never get there. And part of the other part, I mean, the meaning of the struggle is the fact that knowing that we're reaching for something that we can never get to.
Right. You just have to keep on pushing, as it were, huh?
Yep.
What else are you working on now, Roald? I know you're training, so talk to us about your training and your competition plans, and then just as importantly, what you're working on the art side.
Well, as far as training, I'm now, back in, like you said, at the beginning in May, I came out and threw a world age record for 57-year-olds. But that was, 2 months prior to that, I actually tripped and fell and broke my arm in training. So I'd only been literally about 3-4 days out of a cast. And so after I did that, I started thinking about the Olympic trials next year.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I look at it as, kind of a pie in the sky, or kind of, talk about is that something that's even reachable? But then, like the next day, I had people from the UK contacting me, wanting to know whether I threw that with an 800 gram or 700 gram, because it's a slightly lighter javelin.
Right.
But basically wanting to know if I was thinking about trying to, compete for the trials next year. I said, come on. He goes, a 58-year-old? I mean, coming from my 9th Olympic trials, I'll be 22 months shy of my 60th birthday. So I just kind of, laughed it off and thought, yeah, wouldn't it be great? And at that time, I kind of gave them a stat as far as, I think the chance of that happening would be about 1 in 1,000.
Right.
Well, 6 months on, I'd say that's increased now to about 10%. I think there's actually now, again, everything would have to go right. And to me, I'm just thinking about it, 58-year-olds at the 9th Olympic trials, wouldn't that be a story? And again, just thinking about the story aspect of that, and, wearing a new, anyway, just so, I'm 6 months in, I've got another about 3-4 months of really hard training. I don't know if my body can hold out, but that's what I'm going for now. And again, I've got the World Masters is in Toronto in July. So I look at it as it'll be on my way. If by somehow I could get the whatever's needed to qualify, and if not, I look at it as, if I didn't make it, is it worth trying to pursue? I think absolutely. I think it's something that excites me, and just the kind of, when I talk to people, their kind of mouths drop open, and that's when they think it's, I didn't know they had Olympics for masters. I'm like, no, I'll be competing with teenagers, and I realized that
with your grandsons.
Yeah, and again now, and next year there'll be the top British thrower was his 17-year-old, is number 1 in the world under 18.
Mm.
And he wasn't allowed to compete this year at the UK national trials because they said he was too young.
That's interesting.
Which is ridiculous. So anyway,
yeah, it is. In my opinion too.
So he'll be competing next year at 18. I'll be 58. I'm just thinking the storylines there of 2 generations, 40 years apart.
Yeah.
So
that
not
would
only
be a great story, because it
not
really
only
speaks. You spoke earlier about not, allowing limitations to define what you can do, and I think that there would be just would epitomize that philosophy of not allowing limitations to define what you can do, for sure. How about on the art side, Roald? What are you working on?
Well, on the art side, we're again chairing this WA Arts Committee that we're taking in and reviewing, ideas for projects we're going to be doing in Tokyo. Both right now, it's planned on doing one in the Olympic Village in Tokyo and one outside. And so we're trying to get some ideas and the whole idea is to include people in the process and see what people can come up with. But it's going to be challenging as far as just there's, what I learned with Pyeongchang was just, how big the Olympics is. Mm-hmm. And the Winter Olympics is really, almost like half the size of the summer. So there are a lot of challenges and a lot of bureaucracy and but again, look at it as, the sky's the limit, and just again, like whether it's an athlete or an artist, don't worry about, I always tell people, well, I don't know how you do this. And I said, don't worry about how you do something, come up with an idea. Just worry about how to afterwards. Don't limit yourself.
Yeah.
As an athlete, you're limited by your physical, your height, the physical limitations. What I like about, the arts is there's no limitations. If you can think of something, then it's about, then to me, the next stage is, okay, then how would you do it?
Right.
And again, that's something that a lot of people find challenging because they don't want to embarrass themselves or fail. And to me, I did embrace that. Just I did it in Pyeongchang. I did it in front of, I was introduced to, the IOC session and all the IOC members at the end of the 132nd IOC session. Mm-hmm. I was just up there. I felt so comfortable. And I told them that, my lifetime goal was to be an Olympian, because my lifetime dream was to be an Olympic artist. And what I want to do now is, with the arts part, is to really, build it up and to involve as many Olympians, artists and Olympians that are involved in the arts and creative Olympians in, projects, both, during the Olympics, but then also doing stuff in between and doing various, projects, just like with, I don't know if you saw this a few weeks back, we just formed a partnership with the new United States Olympic and Paralympic Museum.
Oh, congrats. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, in Colorado Springs. I'm going to start a new summer educational program next year. So again, we're going to do 4 different mediums, areas. We're going to bring in 4 different artists, and it's just something totally new.
Right.
And what's great with that is that it's Olympic and Paralympic. And to me, and that's another first. And, again, as an artist, I look at it as, and also an athlete, my motivation for doing things is, being a trailblazer, being the first one out there, being a one to get other people involved and to change the way people see and look at things.
Yeah. Do you have pieces for sale as well?
Yes. Actually, right now, I've got my website, www.roaldbradstock.com. But that needs to be, I'm going to put up a new website hopefully by next summer. I'm actually in the midst of moving back to my old house with my art studio. But it's a major project. I've got to get 2 houses renovated and moved and stuff like that. So between the moving and the training right now, and these other stuff that I hadn't, I can't actually get to do my own artwork.
Yeah.
But again, I look at it as the bigger picture here is, and what really excites me is about, coming up with ideas and projects that gets other people involved and collaborations. So to me, it's what I'm working on now is creating multiple platforms that will be used in the future and ongoing, both in the US and worldwide.
Awesome. So roaldbradstock.com, that's where they find that's your website there, right?
Yes.
And they can email you directly from there, or is there an email address?
Yes. So they can email directly from there.
All right, awesome. So Roald, you definitely epitomize this keep on pushing philosophy. Someone who didn't allow, whether it was their medical condition or their height, to define their limits, but rather chose to find a door that was open, chose to not see what was lost, but what you still have and what you can still gain. And you're still doing that today in your 50s, not suffering in a midlife crisis, but blazing new trails, not just as a javelin thrower, but as an artist. And that, my friend, I think epitomizes a keep on pushing philosophy. So again, thank you so much for choosing to spend some time and sharing your wisdom and experience with us and keep on pushing.
Sure, you're welcome.
Yeah, man, thank you. Thanks for watching. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you click on that subscribe button and hit that bell. You'll get a notification every time we post a new video. And don't forget, share it with your friends, man. They want to be inspired as well, right? So share it. Don't keep it. And before you go on to the next video, visit my website, www.devonharris.com. Keep on pushing.